This is honestly not clickbait. I can't think of a worse show that I've seen that has some form of tangible production value. Putting aside all of the major changes that the writers made to the IP of Scooby-Doo, this show is still absolutely horrendous. At a fundamental baseline, this show has some of the worst writing I have ever witnessed. The dialogue is molded from pure cringe, as almost every line is infected with pop culture references, as if this is Deadpool.
Have you ever noticed how pilot episodes of TV shows always have more gratuitous sex and nudity than the rest of the series?
Oh my god, I have.
The jokes are wholly unfunny and are at times very jarring. Like this line that made me do a double take.
You didn't mention Fred had a tiny dong.
Oh yeah, real baby carrot. And I'm gonna ride it all the way to victory.
Huh?
Just from 2 episodes alone, there are so many crazily baffling moments that not even David and Dan could come up with in season 8 of Game of Thrones. I wish I was making this up, but there's a scene where Velma's dad's girlfriend takes off her clothes and starts posing for pictures while her unborn baby protrudes through her skin. I don't know what the hell is happening, and if the writers think this is supposed to be funny, then they're high. Now, the even crazier thing is that this is just scratching the surface. There's so many other insane moments. Like, let's go through some examples. Fred gets shot in his legs by the police, and as they're dragging him out to the cop car, his clothes fall off and everyone can see his penis. Unrelated to that, he also cuts off some random kid's leg in school. Shaggy, or sorry, I mean Norville now, tries to sell one of his kidneys so that he could have enough money to impress Velma, and even Velma tries to sell drugs to her own father. This show is batshit crazy, and I have no idea why anyone would approve of these scripts. I refuse to believe that any higher-ups at HBO actually read these scripts because there is no way they would greenlight this. Just talking about some of these scenes feels like I'm attending a support group as I reflect on this traumatizing experience. Velma is classified as a quote-unquote comedy, but at no point does any potential joke work. Firstly, the show is so obsessed with wanting to be meta so much to the point that it compromises any character as seeming real.
I'm a suspect? I thought lesbians were good at solving crimes. It's like the one positive stereotype perpetuated by cop shows.
And instead, it just comes across as the writers wanting to make random jokes that don't fall in line with what the characters would realistically say. The show immediately cements itself within this kind of dialogue, so the audience is right away getting annoyed by the humor. And since there is no humor, there also isn't any form of good drama, characters, or dialogue to fall back on. Along with this being accompanied by the most bizarre scenes I've ever seen. Another aspect of the comedy within this show is that it's immature humor, despite this supposedly being a more adult and mature rendition of Scooby-Doo. To name a few examples, there are parents stabbing, random sex jokes, or repeating the same joke over and over. There's also random escalations that don't make any sense in the moment that will leave the audience confused instead of laughing. The show never really establishes a clear internal logic, and you are constantly getting tonal whiplash. At times, the show can be somewhat normal, and then we are transported into such weird scenarios. Then another important aspect of comedy is that you want it to be subtle and to have the audience understand it without explaining the joke. Generally, this is done through visual gags, but even as this example shows, the writers instantly ruin the joke by having some random person shout it out loud for the audience.
Oh god, he looks like Hitler! And not just because we compare everyone to Hitler these days.
Then lastly, in regards to the humor, there's just so many almost objectively unfunny moments. Now, I should use the word subjectively because it's a comedy, but I don't know who would find some of this funny. As an example that includes a setup and a punchline, Velma goes to check out what's on her dad's girlfriend's camera. Now, the possibilities could be endless for this joke, but Velma finds out that she takes pictures of babies and vegetables to make money. Like, okay? I'm sure you could have had a way better punchline for that joke, but that wasn't the case, and it was just some random stupid thing. Then somehow the writers have made each character from Scooby-Doo immensely unlikable to the point that this feels like some weird parody you would find on YouTube at 1 a.m. Velma is unbearably annoying as she's always being snarky, arrogant, overly confident, and in general very disrespectful to everyone around her, let alone almost all of her dialogue being meta humor.
I spit truth without a filter, like every comedian before #MeToo.
Look.
Fred is a rich douchebag who is borderline psychotic and is also a literal baby in the show.
My name is Fred.
There's a scene where he's given the task of cutting a steak, and he doesn't know what to do. Daphne is now a drug dealer.
According to TV, it's morally okay to deal drugs if your life is just kinda crappy.
And Norval is really the only somewhat normal person in comparison to everyone, but he's still very annoying.
Didn't answer my VMs. Voicemails, because I still don't know if you listened to my VMs. Voicemails, though I left you some other VMs. Voicemails.
I know what VMs are!
These foreign people do not resemble anyone from Scooby-Doo in any manner. They feel like stark contrasts as to who they should be. If you were to remove their names and slightly change their visual designs, no one would be able to guess that these characters were supposed to be who they are. None of them are likable, and they are truly despicable. The worst of the bunch to me is Fred. Through the course of episode 2, we learn that Fred is a rich late bloomer, and because of this, he has the mentality of a 5-year-old spoiled brat. I don't know if the writers are trying to over-exaggerate these issues for the sake of comedy or something, but it doesn't even come across as being funny. So what we are left with is an uncomfortable moment that ruins a character that we used to love, along with the show overly trashing white men as being bad and comes across as tasteless. Since these are also pre-existing characters from tons of past content, we're naturally going to compare them to their original counterparts. So when the original characters are on the opposite end of the spectrum in comparison to the new characters, then it's going to be jarring, along with a lot of the comedy feeling like diminishing humor that is flat out insulting to the characters. Like, if these characters weren't at all related to Scooby-Doo, then whatever, it would just be a random, forgettable, and bad show. But the fact that these are pre-established characters that we are used to makes this experience even more dreadful. This show resembles some cursed parody of Scooby-Doo instead of a more mature prequel show that it was advertised as. And speaking of a mature show, the writers for some reason associate adult with excessive and gratuitous sex and nudity. This is not what people want to see when watching Scooby-Doo in general. And the weird thing is that the writers are even self-conscious about this aspect and make a joke about having sex in the show to draw in viewers. But who in their right mind would want to watch this show for that, let alone them even advertising that? It comes across as incredibly childish and completely ruins the humor when you're immediately stooping this low. Like, the first minute of episode 1 alone would have quickly deterred me if I wasn't going to make a video about this show. To quickly detail what happens in that first minute, we have 2 cockroaches having sex. I wish I could be making that up. A joke about how origin stories being reserved for powerful white men, and for women, it's about hot chicks going crazy. Another sex joke with Fred's van, and showing a locker room full of naked girls with a heavy-handed fourth wall-esque breaking joke. And this minute essentially highlights everything that is wrong with the writing. From the stupid dialogue of characters referencing pop culture, very weird and off-putting humor, and an uncomfortable inclusion of nudity despite censoring it, so I guess I can show this and not get demonetized, hopefully. The fact that the show got worse from this first minute was very surprising to me. If She-Hulk looks like a great and normal show in comparison to yours, then you're doing something wrong. I would make this video longer and go into a deeper analysis, but I fear I would lose my mind in doing so. So thank you for watching, and please do not watch this show, and get away while you still can.